All right, so now that we know all about the foundations or the fundamentals that allow us to work with our HTTP servers, let's actually look at the servers themselves. All right, so the most basic type of HTTP server that you're more than likely going to see or create is one that simply serves static files. And by static files, we just mean files that have no source code, do anything special like nothing with any PHP or Ruby on Rails running in it, just a static HTML file that's sitting on the server. All right, so in order to serve these static files, the first thing we need to do is start the HTTP server, right? So we're going to start the server and make it listen on the port because remember, server is listening for incoming requests in order to respond to those requests. All right, so we're going to start our HTTP server and listen on a particular port. All right, so then we're going to create a request handler because remember from our server lecture, we said that at a minimum we need to handle the request event. All right, so we're going to implement a request handler. And what do we need to do in our request handler? We're serving a static file, so that means we need to open the file, right? And then send the file or write the file contents to the response. All right, so which module are we going to use to read a file to read our file? If you said FS module, you are a very astute student. All right, so let's take a look at the basic implementation of this. All right, so you see the very first thing we do, as we always do, is require our HTTP module. All right, so we're going to set up our um, options, which you'll see in a second because we're going to simulate our request. We're going to do our client request in the same file. All right, but all right, so here's our um, options object. I'm sorry. We're saying localhost, which is the same machine, port 8080, and the request that we want is the hello.html file located at the root. All right, so our server says, all right, we're just going to simulate. We're going to create the server in just a second, as you'll see. All right, so I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong file. Hold on, this is the client side. Let me go to the server side. Forgive me. All right, here's our server. All right, so for the server, we need to require our FS module that we're going to use for reading our file. Remember, all right. So here's we're going to require our HTTP module to create our server. All right. Why do we need to require this URL? That's right, because we need to parse the URL that's coming in to figure out what they're requesting, right? All right, and we need to specify our root directory. So I'm specifying a root directory here of HTML. So you see this HTML folder here. We're saying that on this server, the directory we're going to look in for any files is this HTML server. All right, and a lot of times on the server, working with Windows, there'll be a specific name like inetpub or whatever. Okay. All right, so let's look at our actual code to create the server. All right, so here we go, creating the server. All right. So we create the server. What's the server? When you create a server, you use HTTP, which is the module, and we use the create server function, .create server. All right, so what are we going to pass it? We're going to pass it a callback function that says how to handle any incoming request. All right, so what's our callback function does? Our callback function takes a request and response object. All right, so you'll always have this format here. All right, it's going to take a request and a response object. All right, now what we need first, we need to, from the request object, remember it has a URL property, we're going to parse that URL and create our URL object. All right, so we're going to use the object, the path name on that URL object as the parameter to read file. So we've seen both of these before, so it shouldn't be anything new. All right, read file is going to take the path of the file, and it's going to take a callback function. All right, so what does the callback function for read file do? All right, of course, it's going to take the error object and the data that's being streamed to it. All right, if there's an error, we're going to write a 404 response, right? So now we're using that RES. That's our response object, all right? We don't have to explicitly create it. The HTTP module framework is going to handle that for us, all right? So we're going to write a header with 404, all right? And then we're going to send a response here with, or excuse me, end the response by string, converting that error object to JSON string. All right, then we're going to return that response. All right, excuse me, we're going to exit out of this callback so we don't execute this other stuff. So we're calling return to exit out. All right, so if we don't have an error, so if we don't execute in here, then we're going to write the head, all right, sending a 200, which is okay, and then we're going to send that response back to the server by calling end, all right, and passing it the data that we were passed, all right, or the data from the file. This is the actual contents of the file here. We're going to pass it back to the response, all right. Now, once we create the server, which is this code here, this is going to create a server object. Now we can say listen on port 8080. So our server will be listening on port 8080. All right. All right. So let's see if we can fire that up. Actually, I'm going to remove this stuff here. And I'm going to tell it listen on port 8813. 131 port 1300 because I usually have stuff running on 8080. All right, so let's run that. Start our server. All right, so just to start it, we go the name of our file, which is server static, passing it to node. All right, and our server is now listening. All right, it's listening for any request. The reason you don't see anything is because we actually haven't sent a request to the server yet. All right, so let's look at what so now we need to build an HTTP client that's going to send a request to our server that we have running now. All right, and when it sends the request, the server should then execute, our server application that we just created should execute, read in that HTML file, and then send a response back to the client. All right. So now we can look at our client application, which I was looking at before. All right, so we've seen this again. We're going to require HTTP. We're going to specify our options. All right, so it's going to say localhost, and I need to change the port here because I changed the port that my server is listening on. So if I don't have the same port, then it's not going to get the incoming request. So I'm going to change that port to 1300. All right, and there's our resource that we want, which is hello.html. All right, so what does our code do here? All right, let's just look at this part. Let's skip down this part first. Here's our HTTP request object, right? We're passing our options. And here we're giving it a callback, and our callback takes the response from the server, and we're giving it another method, handle response, that's going to take that response and do the handling of it for us. All right. So remember, we do that sometimes, put name functions in here to avoid all those callbacks and nested callbacks, etc. All right. And .n, of course, is going to execute the request, sending it to the server. Now, all right. So here we have. What is the how do we handle the response? Here the response comes in, we have an empty string server data. Since it's streaming in, we're going to say on data, we're going to append it to our empty string, right? And then when the end event fires, we're just going to write the content that was sent back to us from the server to the console. All right, so now we have our HTTP server, and we have our that takes in a request from a client, gets that request from the file system, and returns a response. All right. We also have built our HTTP client, which makes a request to the server. All right. Now, so if we simply open this page from a browser, we should see our results. I'm sorry. Let's open it from. Let's run it from console. So let me open up another one. All right, so no HTTP client static. All right, so I'm getting an error here. Cannot find module. Did I mistype it? Yes, I typed HTTPS. Secure. All right. Getting another error here. My connection was refused. Why is my connection refused? Is it still asking for 8080? Did I not save it? Yes, I didn't save it. It was still asking for 8080. See that error, connection refused, 127.0.0.1, 8080. So it was still trying to connect to the local host to port 8080. So that told me that I hadn't saved it yet. All right, so now I saved it. There we go. So we got back our results, which was that HTML file. So we open this, we got back the same contents that were in the HTML file. All right, awesome stuff. All right, play around with that, try and change your ports, and have some fun with it. Take care.